Toss a coin to your YouTuber, Valley of Black. Oh, hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Azora Hype here. Happy Saturday, happy weekend. Super excited to be here with one of my favorite people in the whole world, in Deep Geek. I don't think we've actually done a stream since, I don't know, it might have been Coen of Thrones. So that's a long time. I don't know. It's been a while anyways. Robert, super excited to have you back. What's going on, man?
It was a lot more recent than that, Carl, but I'm clearly not memorable. It's a pleasure to be here, as it always is. Also one of my favorite people in the entire universe. Kyle, you are an officer and a gentleman, and it's a delight, and I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, did we do a Witcher stream, Robert?
We did.
I can't even remember, dude.
It was you, me, and JR. But, let's just move on because, you're just going to embarrass yourself more.
I mean, that's the effect that winter has, everyone. I'm currently getting some sunshine from my window here. Me and Robert were talking about the effects of winter, and he was like, yeah, we got some rain. So he was kind of rubbing it in a little bit. For those of you who don't know Robert, crazy if you don't, super famous YouTuber. All his links are in the description of the video. I know Robert hates when I do that.
Slightly overstating it, I think.
So he has 2 channels, links in the description of the video if you want to check Robert out, of course. Well, yeah, let's kind of get into it, Robert. There's been a lot of Season 2 Witcher news. You're a fan of The Witcher. Kind of talk a little bit about what you've kind of been seeing, because we've discussed, Francesca a little bit, the Vesemir news. I just dropped a video on that, like literally an hour before we started streaming. So what are your there's a lot of hype. There's been a lot of hype lately.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from my perspective, where I come from is I love just trying to work out what they're going to be covering. What are the clues when they're saying, here's a few actors that we've cast, here's the roles. That means, so you're going to go to Kaer Morhen. So you've got those characters. Oh, so does that mean you're going to be dipping into the next book? Is it mostly going to be about Blood of Elves? So that's the kind of work that I love doing, is just trying to not just getting hype about who the new actors are and everything, but what does this mean about the story?
Yeah, it's certainly I think kind of the caveat. I'm going to do some shout outs in chat, by the way, and we have an awesome donation which we're going to get to. But kind of the one thing that for season 1 that was a bit of the critics kind of ramped on, and some of the people that were just getting into the show, those timelines were kind of this like little wrench for some people, kind of getting over how to understand how the story was working. And eventually people understood, like, hey, there's this time discrepancy, and then they realized that the Ciri timeline, Yennefer stuff, and the Geralt stuff is kind of that happening all at different times. But really, really interesting that you say that, because season 2 is mainly going to be focused on Blood of Elves, the first novel. And we got some news that they're actually still going to be doing a short story, at least in episode 1. We got the casting of Nivellen, which we're going to talk about, Kristofer Hivju. So we're going to get into all that. And I just want to shout out Morley, gave a super generous donation. Just let me read it out here for everyone in chat. She's one of my favorite people in the community. She just said she loves Robert and me, and the community, and yeah, just wanted to send positive vibes to the stream. So thank you very much, more, for that $50 donation. I will share that. I will share that with Robert when we meet in Coen of Thrones in Orlando for a whiskey or something fun. So I appreciate that very much. And yeah, there's like so many awesome people in chat too, Robert. I'm sure they want to hear your voice read them out.
Oh, well, the glasses have to go back on for that one, mate. Okay, so Alana Prestana Bravas. Hi there, Alana. Anna Iglesias. Tadawson68. Dawson Nicola. Hi there, Nicola. Juracan OTDA. Jess Britvik. Kathy Meir. Jessica Melvin. Lots of great people in today. Shelby Jean Sprouse. Who else am I missing? I'm sure there are some other people on here.
The original David Adams.
Yeah, Purple Feline. Excellent. Fantastic people.
We also have Shelby Jean Sprouse and a few others from the Witcher Addicts group, which are actually streaming from live right now. StreamYard has this really cool feature where it lets you stream from all sorts of different locations. So we're live on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube. So man, the future is crazy when it comes to all these different tools for streaming. Really, really cool.
And we have the moderator who was promised, Chrissy of Oldstone's legend in her own lifetime, is also here as well.
who's going to Con of Thrones this year. Very excited about that.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Chrissy, I owe you lots and lots of drinks, so this is all good.
So yeah, let's get back into it. So you discussed Blood of Elves. That is certainly because this is where the Nilfgaardian stuff starts to happen, without too many spoilers, because there is a lot that happens. But you mentioned Kaer Morhen too, and now with the casting of Vesemir and the casting of these 3 new Witchers, it's certainly going to be a big part of season 2. That's something I actually put it in the thumbnail. Kaer Morhen has a picture of Ciri, Vesemir, and Geralt. So that kind of something that I really wanted to talk about today, and I know that you enjoy as part of your favorite moments from A Blood of Elves. What do you think? Like 3-4 episodes, that's what they confirmed for. We're getting parts of Kaer Morhen. What excites you most about that particular plot line, Robert?
Well, I mean, I think we get to see Geralt in a completely new situation. So all through season 1, it was just like he's this lone wolf going out doing his thing. But actually, then you come back to Witcher school, and you find that he's not the most experienced Witcher. There are others there. There are others with other talents as well. He's taken on, finally, at the end of season 1, he took on this, accepted his destiny with Ciri. And so he's got this whole new relationship there that he's got to figure out how does he do this kind of mentoring father thing going on. So we will see Geralt in a completely new light. I suspect from what you're saying, if episode 1 is that short story, then that's probably like en route to Kaer Morhen or something like that. But then we're going to see a completely different feel. And again, probably Yennefer and Geralt apart. So it's going to be a very different feel to season 1, certainly this first half of season 2, I think.
Now, one really interesting thing that you mentioned, and actually me and Aziz talked about in the book club yesterday, is that we're getting the short story in season 1, and this is something that I didn't expect that we were going to be getting after they kind of solved all the timeline stuff at the end of season 1, with people coming together and Yennefer doing her own thing wherever she's at. But it's going to be really interesting because Ciri is with Geralt now, and in the books, Geralt and Nivellen, it's just them two having a conversation. So it'll be interesting to see if Geralt and Ciri go to the manor, and Nivellen's not there, and he tells the story of everything that happened with Nivellen, or Ciri is there to kind of do that Sherlock Holmes work and go along with Geralt and kind of do that interaction with Nivellen, because it's super interesting, because the curse of Nivellen was 12 years in the books, and the birth of Ciri was also at that same time. So I'm wondering if they'll age it up a little bit in the show, maybe like 15 years, to make the curse and Ciri's birth like the same year, and then kind of have it like intertwine that theme of destiny, really pushing that in the first episode again. So it'll be kind of interesting to see, Robert, how they pull that off, because this is certainly something that doesn't happen in the book. No Geralt and Ciri together for that moment.
No, absolutely not. And I think what's going to intrigue me is how far from the book are they going to go? Because with my sort of literary hat on, Blood of Elves sometimes does drag a little bit. There are lots of long conversations around the campfire with lots of different people talking about stuff. There's lots of things going on with Ciri where she's learning things, which takes a very long time. So I'd be interested to see what they're doing with all of that. I'm sure they'll give us all of the information, but are they going to kind of stray away from it, with the hint being that they're going to have at least one of those short stories? Are they going to stray away from it, not just by looking back to the short stories, but also trying to drop in, and I'm not going to go into spoilers here, but the longer term plot that goes through the books that presumably they're going to be following on the show? They could start dropping in a few of the characters that are there that I think they're going to, and also some of the plot that we're going to see developing all the way through.
Yeah, one of the things that, just popped in my head was the prophecy. We're definitely going to get a little bit more of that, because that's kind of an overarching plot theme, something that's bigger. And we're going to, kind of see that connection that Ciri made and broke a lawn forest. That a little bit of that was cut out. But certainly something that was really interesting that was mentioned by the showrunner, Robert, was Fringilla got an expanded role. And Kay here didn't have as much, because he's not really in the short stories, but he had, he's a central figure in the Nilfgaardian army. So it's going to be really interesting to see, because in Game of Thrones, one of the things that I absolutely love is we have the perspective from, the Cersei Lannisters of the world and the Tywin Lannisters. It's just not from the perspective of, our main protagonists like Geralt, who are, the so-called good people. So I find that really interesting. And I think that I think it'll be nicely balanced. Some of those slower moments in Blood of Elves can be cut out, and we can kind of give more character exposition for a Kaer or Fringilla and those types of characters. Vilgefortz is someone that's going to develop as a bigger character going forward. So that's really something that I'm looking forward to. And it's really exciting that the showrunners are saying that, because, I felt like they nailed like 90% of the castings in season 1.
Yeah, I agree. And actually one of the bits of casting that intrigued me the most was that they named Lydia, who is the assistant to Vilgefortz. Now, if she's getting involved in this, then that means that Vilgefortz is, as you say, going to be a lot more heavily involved in the plot, which is right, he should be. They kind of introduced him in season 1 and didn't really go very far with it. But so I think that we're going to see a whole lot more wizardy intrigue, I think, in season 2.
Yeah, because we kind of saw the difference between the Lodge of Sorceresses. We saw the Battle of Sodden, which was I think was fantastic. But then we saw the Brotherhood with the with the Stregobors of the world, and in those powerful. There's a real kind of divide there, without spoiling too much, between the male and the female guilds of magic, and that is something certainly and that's why I believe season 2 of The Witcher is going to be even better than season 1. You look at the trajectory of kind of what happened with Game of Thrones, like it really peaked around season 3 when we got to start some of those bigger moments that happened. And really interesting that we get to learn more about the backstory of the motivations, the intentions of some of these people, because we got a little bit of that with Stregobor. He's been around for a while. We got kind of a little bit of a teaser on how he manipulated Istrid and how that worked in with Jennifer and all kind of the ripple effects of that. So that is really something really interesting going forward, kind of seeing a little bit more of the magical plot line, and then Nilfgaard and all of that. So we're going to get more perspectives, kind of like 3 or 4 different POVs, I suspect, throughout the season.
Yeah, and the other thing I would just sort of add on to that, as well as that, and I'm glad people like wizardy intrigue, but the political machinations is another phrase I like. There's going to be a lot more of that, because the big picture, we sort of saw the outline of it in season 1. You get Nilfgaard coming and attacking from the south. Then you get the Battle of Sodden Hill, which we saw basically the Nilfgaard sort of being pushed back in this kind of fiery death. So it's pretty clear that they lost. Nilfgaard gets pushed back. And so at the beginning of season 2, we're going to be left in this kind of like strange aftermath of the war. And there's this kind of uneasy peace. So what's going to happen then is everybody knows Nilfgaard is strong. They're not going to give up. They're going to keep on pushing forward. How do the North respond? The North is lots of little kingdoms. We saw quite a few of the different kings and queens actually there during the season. How are they all going to respond as a group to the threat from the south? And that's going to be also one of the big themes running through season 2, I think.
Because there is kind of this, without spoiling too much again, there is kind of this Game of Thrones happening behind the scenes, and I think we'll see a lot of that happen in season 2. And you mentioned, other kings and queens. We had Foltest, like amassing his army, and that's another force, right? So we have kind of, the Southern Empire of Nilfgaard. They're encroaching. They're kind of trying to do their Roman thing. They're trying to get more land and gain more power and kind of eliminate some of the people that are in their way. Certainly the White Flame showing up, that's something that I'm super excited for in the future. But yeah, great point, Robert. I just think season 2 overall, like it'll kind of remind me of what happened when we got the introduction of Stannis and Melisandre. We started having some of those more intriguing players that make a big impact on the story in future seasons start to have a little bit of a bigger role, because season 1 kind of served as our origin stories, so to speak, for a lot of these characters.
Yeah, it did. And you could really see season 1 as explaining the link between those 3 main characters. what is the whole point about the child of surprise and all the rest of it? Where does that create a link? What's going on with the last wish? How does that link them together? And so at the end of season 1, they're not together as a family unit, but they are a sort of connected unit at that point. Yennefer and Geralt being the sort of the mother and father figure, and Ciri being the child figure. It's never that easy, obviously, but that season 1 was the creation of that unit, and season 2 going forwards will be exploring how that unit works. And if season 2 does stick to the books, then you will see a lot more about the sort of the intricacies of how that relationship between those 3 characters is going to play out.
One thing that I felt season 1 was a great adaptation, and I mean, I felt it was a great start, and it did as much as it could with how much it needed to explain and get across in the first season. I felt like it was a really good job that they did, and Lauren, the showrunner, along with Tomek, they've been really kind of adamant about, hey, like, we love the games too, but this is the books. Like, we want to get to the end of the books. Our end game is to get to that last book and try to tell the story of the books, because Andrzej is just an amazing story if you've read the whole series. But one thing that you mentioned earlier, and then we actually have a question from Maura Lee that we got. I asked her if she had any questions, because she said she was going to make a donation today, and she kind of talked about like the impact of the people that will be training her at Kaer Morhen, because she's going to go there and she kind of has to learn how to, she has magic, she doesn't really know how to use it. We saw kind of the release of when she felt threatened of what happened. But it's really interesting that you mentioned kind of Vesemir being that father figure for Geralt, and then Geralt being that father figure for Ciri. So we're going to kind of see that in the same location. Vesemir seeing how Geralt reacts with Ciri, and then Vesemir also reacting with Ciri, and then of course in the books, like, one of my favorite characters, Coen, gets to train with Ciri, and there's some really great moments that I think that are going to be highlighted in season 2. So what are your kind of thoughts on that? Like, because Ciri really, when the showrunner Lauren was talking about it, she was just like, hey, in the beginning I was going to make Ciri the main character, but then I ended up deciding that we can't do that. We have to make it Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer. So Ciri's story in season 2, Robert, Maura says, do you see Ciri becoming a Witcher, honing her skills? What do you think about that?
Well, this is clearly the intention initially, that it's not made clear on the show, but in the books, the reason why Geralt initially does or invokes the Law of Surprise is not, as on the show, a kind of like a jokey thing. That's what witches tended to do when they saved somebody's life and they were asked what price that they should be paid for it, because witches only charge for going off and killing monsters. They don't charge for saving human lives. And so the witcher would generally invoke the Law of Surprise. Most of the time it didn't produce anything, or it just produced like an apple when somebody got home that was left out for them or something like that. But occasionally the idea was that this would produce a child who would then be promised to the Witcher and be taken back to the Witcher school. So that's the theory behind it. But obviously witches tend to be men, and Ciri has got a whole lot more going on with her than just that she's a child of surprise. There's many more layers of sort of magic and history and things going on there that we started to see hints of in season 1, with when she was like suddenly coming out with those strange prophecies and like screaming out and people getting flung everywhere. This is the start of her, effectively the unleashing of her magical powers. So it's not just about her being a witcher. So the bit that I'm really looking forward to is the fact that she's going to emerge at Kaer Morhen, and there's going to be this sort of like, oh, right, so she's going to be training as a witcher, but she's not a boy, so we don't really know how to do that. And that's going to bring issues. But then also she's got this whole other layer going on with her that they won't know how to deal with either. So yes, she's going to be training, but it's not going to go in the way that anybody expects.
we have a lot of powerful female characters certainly that can show up that could make an impact. Triss Marigold, Yennefer. Obviously, we heard Ciri say who's Yennefer at the end of season 1, so there's definitely a connection there. And one thing that's really interesting is, and to your point, Robert, like Vesemir is he's trying to keep the Witcher tradition alive. He's part of the golden age of Witchers, and he was part of this. There was this massacre at Kaer Morhen where almost all of the Witchers got wiped out. So he's around. He's super protective of the Witchers that are, still alive, like Eskel, Lambert, and Geralt, specifically from the School of the Wolf. And then we have another character coming in, Coen, who's from the School of the Griffin. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of see, Vesemir overlooking everybody's actions and kind of what's going on at Kaer Morhen, and he wants to keep this tradition alive because Witchers provide a service to humanity by keeping them safer by killing monsters. But then we have this alternative thing where humanity's kind of becoming a monster with all of these wars and stuff like that, and that's kind of clashing. So we see all of this conflict, and Witchers they're a dying breed. There's not a lot of them left, so that's. Ciri plays a big role, and I'm certainly really, really interested to see, the impact that Vesemir makes. And he's probably the character I'm most excited to see because, he's a mentor to not only Geralt, but many other characters. So he's going to make a huge impact. And certainly Geralt won't be the only person interacting with Ciri. So Ciri is going to be able to, and she's smart, she comes from a kingdom. She understands hierarchy and all that kind of stuff, but she's out in the real world now. She doesn't have that same safety bubble she did in Sintra. There's a lot of danger out there.
Yeah, there is. And one of the reasons why the Witchers have sort of been depleted is, yes, that there were people turned against them, but also their role was to kill all these monsters. And actually, they've been quite successful over the last few hundred years in getting rid of a lot of these monsters. And so the fewer monsters there are, then the less need there is for Witchers, which is why, although the show makes it look like every time Geralt turns up, there's a monster to be slaying, actually, most of the time, he's just wandering around without anything to do and nobody's hiring him because there aren't lots of monsters about. So it's the Witcher dynamic with Vesemir is that he is clinging on to the old ways, and the way the one thing we should probably explain about this is that the Witchers during kind of like the winter months, that's when they all come back to Kaer Morhen and they do their training and they and they sort of get together, they discuss things and they figure out where they're going to go next year, and then they head back out again when it sort of gets to spring and things like that. So that's what's happening, is that they're sort of going to come back in, all gather together, figure out what's going on, go, oh, I don't know what's going on here with Ciri, and then at some point the idea is that they would all go back again. So that's the sort of the background to what we've got going on here.
Not dissimilar to what happened in season 8 with Game of Thrones, with everyone coming together. Definitely different circumstances. But it's pretty interesting when you get a bunch of, major characters together. There's all sorts of conflicting, ideologies and all of that. So that's going to be really interesting to see people who are, from the same ideology, the School of the Wolf, and kind of Ciri inserted there and other characters making an impact on that. I see some more people in chat. I just want to do some more shout outs. I see Mandolin. Nice to see you, Shannon T. Gina is calling me a pet thief on Facebook, so thank you for that. Jess, Forrest, Blood of Elves, we got in chat as well. We already mentioned Nicola. Voice of Reason, nice to see you. We see to Dawson, Robin, Bravosi Podcast. And if anybody's watching for the first time and you haven't come to the live chat, come join us. Feel free to come, ask questions or give your thoughts on what you're most excited for season 2. So what's some other stuff that is exciting you for season 2 of The Witcher, Robert?
Well, I think it's the development of, we sort of touched on it a bit, but the development of Ciri's powers. Now, they kind of slowballed this in season 1, was that it was almost like kind of a blink and you miss it in one of the first episodes. when her grandmother is sort of telling her to go and she sort of says no and things sort of shudder a little bit and then there's a pause. They look at them and that was weird, but then carry on talking. Then you get a little bit later on, she does a little bit more. And then at the end, there's this sort of huge moment when she's sort of just like screaming out, going absolutely crazy. She's doing prophecies and all the rest of it. And then she wakes up after it all and sees all the bodies of these people who were going to be sort of taking her in, flung across all over the place and dead. And they have to go somewhere with that. They can't just leave that hanging. What's going to happen with her now? And so I think we're going to see an extension of her powers. And also, as you were saying, the witches are going to look and go, well, this isn't our strength. We're good at fighting. They're good at little bits of magic like the signs and stuff like that, but they're not magicians. So they're going to need to figure out how do they manage this, because it's actually going to start being a danger not just to Ciri herself, but to them if this doesn't get trained and managed in some way.
One thing that was really interesting about Game of Thrones is how long it took people to come to the belief that humanity was being threatened by the White Walkers, you know? And then, of course, there's a similar kind of thread where humanity, we saw in that, then in the end, you know, Daenerys was a problem and Cersei was a problem. So certainly there's that same kind of element going on. But one thing that they kind of touched on, and I talked about in my episode 4 review, if you want to go check it out, people in chat, is the conjunction of spheres. And, you know, we heard Queen Calantha talk about how she thought Pavetta wasn't special because the gift had passed Calantha herself. And usually this was something that, you know, was a generational thing that continued on through each birth. So we heard about the Curse of the Black Sun. We heard Stregobor talk about why specifically people were after Ciri. That is something that kind of gets fleshed out some more, like we talked about the magic-y side of stuff. But the conjunction of spheres, and, you know, I think, you know, without spoiling too much, there's definitely more to the relationship, that faded relationship of Dooney and Pavetta, and this overarching plot and how special Ciri is, because Nilfgaard is seeking her out. They want her. Like, Cahir's after her for a reason. So that in itself, Robert, talks about the danger that you talked about. It's not just that Ciri is uncontrolled, like, you know, like a Jean Grey with her, you know, her magical ability. She doesn't know how to harness it. But we also have this other thing going on where there's, you know, people trying to acquire power through acquiring her. So really, really interesting stuff. Like, multiple groups of people want Ciri.
They do, and they want her for different reasons. And so there's, as well as the magic-y stuff and the sort of the more prophetic-y stuff that we were talking, there's also the political angle here, is that she is the heir to Sintra. And Sintra, yes, it was destroyed, but it's hugely symbolically important, and it's a very advantageous place for a sort of a castle, a city to be. It sort of helps control this river. There's a big river which is sort of protecting the north from Nilfgaard, which was why, you know, the Battle of Sodden Hill was so important, because that was preventing people moving beyond the river. Now, if somebody gets hold of the heir of Sintra suddenly, on a leaving aside all the magical stuff, that is an incredibly important political prisoner to have. And in those days, if you could try and sell them off to somebody, you could try to marry them to somebody, you could try to install them as like a puppet ruler. She's an incredibly important political prisoner right now, and she's sort of gone missing. So there's people want her for different reasons. Some of them wanting her for the prophetic stuff, some of them for the magic-y stuff, some of them for pure political reasons. There is a hunt on that we saw in season 1, but it's just going to be renewed, and though I hate the word, embiggened in season 2.
What's really interesting too is it's not similar to what happened with Ramsay and Sansa, but you touched on the point of political prisoners, and we saw that, you know, Ramsay wanted to create an heir, and that was something that Roose Bolton was like, hey, like, you need to create an heir, or I'm going to create an heir, and then you're not important anymore. So there's kind of that kind of thing going on in the background. And speaking of, you know, political things going on, Robert, you know, we had this preview of the anti-elven attitudes, and we had kind of, you know, the dark history of what happened with humanity and the elves. And you know, there's been some, if you go to RedenianIntelligence.com, they have their kind of the treasure trove of all the Witcher season 2 news stuff that's going on. Link in the description of the video if you want to check that out. Felivandrel, King of Elves, makes a bigger impact. And you know, we obviously saw Ciri kind of with the Dryads and Brocolan Forest, and you know, they kind of have their own fight in there too. So we're going to see more of that. And the first book is called Blood of Elves, you know, which talks about the elder blood, obviously, that Ciri has, but there is this bigger impact with the Scoia'tael. This is going to be really interesting. So we know we're getting the Scoia'tael in season 2. So what are your thoughts on that, Robert, and how that will impact season 2?
Yeah, I mean, this is important for those who don't know about the Scoia'tael. Basically, this is the Elven and Elder race resistance. They're the Freedom Force. The humans, as all the backstory is that a long time ago, the elves and the dwarves and the gnomes and all the rest of it, they were living in this land, and then humans came and pushed them out, basically, and just sort of squeezed them into a few forests and reservations and all the rest of it. And so the elves, as in almost all fantasy worlds, they live a very long time, but they don't have very many children. So they are not going to kind of replenish their forces and push back. But now they've got this this problem that, first of all, there is some, and I think it would be spoilery to go into, but there is some people who are trying to politically manipulate them. But also they have a legitimate grudge against humanity. And so they are gathering their forces into the squirrels, the Scoia'tael, who are doing this kind of guerrilla warfare against humanity. And that just makes the whole situation a whole lot more complicated, as well as the fact that not all of the sort of the people from the elder races, there are some dwarves who just don't agree with that kind of stuff, and actually they've made peace with the humans and want to live alongside them. But there is, all the way through the books, and it's starting to come out on the show, I think, there is this little bit of an angle about there's a racism issue here. There's intolerance. There's helping us understand that actually the humans aren't just the natural owners of this land. There were other people before them, and they do have a point.
Yeah, there's definitely this xenophobia, this overarching xenophobia theme that they, you know, kind of try to push out there. And one thing that I wanted to talk about is if we're talking about traveling, Robert just finished his last Traveler's Guide. Speaking of, by the way, if you want to go check that out on his channel, Ashai. But traveling to Kaer Morhen is way, way up in the north. So to get to Kaer Morhen without interacting with any other groups, that's going to be a pretty difficult thing. You know, oh, it's a little bit odd that you're traveling with this little girl and you're a Witcher. What's going on? Why are you guys doing this? So there is kind of this interesting situation, and we know how dangerous the world of the Witcher is. They really established that, you know, with executing Sapkowski's mythology in season 1. So definitely something that's interesting there. Speaking a little bit more of magic-y stuff and elves again, Robert, there's a character called Francesca. And, we talked about how elder blood and elven blood enhances magic. She's an interesting character that makes an impact, kind of on the level of, without spoiling too much, of Yennefer. So something really, really, really interesting going on there. She's another character that's going to show up in season 2.
She is, and I mean she appears more in book 2. Well, if you ignore the short stories, book 2, Age of Contempt. Yeah. So it's interesting that she appears here, which means either they're just kind of introducing the character so that we know who she is later on, or they're going to try and draw some of that story down into this one. But yeah, so she's an elf, and she is interesting because, as I say, one of the things that the stories do well is to show that not all elves are not just one homogenous group, that they all think the same things and want the same things and all the rest of it. And this is something George R. R. Martin has actually commented on actually before, which is like that he always felt it a bit odd that orcs are all orcs the same. Are there factions of orcs? Are there rebel orcs who don't like the other orcs? That kind of thing often isn't teased out in fantasy worlds, and here the introduction of this character should show that we do get some people who have different views on how things should be done. And she's a fantastic character. I really enjoy her character. She's really good, great fun, and a protagonist in a way that she pushes the action on. A lot of what happened in seasons 1 and 2, the protagonist, we knew the protagonist, it was Geralt going off and doing stuff, or Yennefer going off and doing stuff, but she actually is then starting to be pushing action from another way and forcing the main characters to be having to react to her.
Yeah, she is extremely intelligent as well. So politically, understands what's going on in the world, going to make an impact. And her brother is going to be also appearing in season 2. So Robert spoke about kind of some of the Time of Contempt stuff. They spoke about how some of that's going to be coming in season 2, which I certainly find interesting because there was this anticipation that we were going to be getting a few more short stories, but we only may be getting 1 or 2 of those with a grain of truth of Nivellen and maybe some of the Istrid Yennefer stuff, which could possibly be brought into season 2. We have some new people in chat. Thanks, Robin, for showing up. And yeah, people are saying that they're really enjoying the book club. I love that. I'm currently going over my reread right now, and I know, Robert, you're listening a bit to the audiobooks. So
I read through them before the show came out. I read through them. I sped read through the last few. It has to be said, but now I'm taking my time over them, and I've got the audiobooks, and I'm happily working my way through them. It's fantastic. I'm really enjoying them. The second go through actually adds a huge amount to it, I would say.
Yeah, I always, like, me and Aziz were talking a little bit yesterday, like some of the Beauty and the Beast, like the fairy tales, the inversion on the tropes that Sapkowski does. We were talking a little bit about that yesterday. I find myself like, this is like little nuggets, and going through my Song of Ice and Fire reread again. There's always stuff that I find even through second, third reread. You know what I mean? I'm like, whoa, like how did I miss that? So there is a lot of depth to this story. It's not as I don't think it's as confusing as A Song of Ice and Fire for me anyways. It's a little bit easier to understand, but there certainly is a depth of characters and a lot of different regions and factions and stuff like that. And it kind of does have a lot of that same meat that A Song of Ice and Fire does.
It does. And I think the way that I would put this is that when you say that it's not as complex, he didn't, when he created this world, he didn't create the same huge background that, say, Tolkien spent decades creating languages and histories and legends and all the rest of it. And George R. R. Martin, as we know, he's created fake history books and huge amounts of a million different characters for his world. With The Witcher, we don't get that. We get the 5 books, we get the 2 short story collections, and that's it. He didn't even do a map. The maps we've got are things that other people have made up from his writings. He's not done any sort of equivalent to the Silmarillion or anything like that. And I think that's deliberate. It's not just him being lazy or something like that. I think he wants us to experience this through the eyes of the people who are living in this world. So yeah, primarily Geralt and also a few other point of view characters. We see this and we understand things and we hear things as they do, not just because we happen to know, because we've read the background material. We know a lot more.
We actually got a question from Chad and another donation, Robert, here. Jessica Melvin. So we'll take this one and talk a little bit about this. And like I said, even if you don't have a donation, you have a question, feel free to pop it in the chat. Like, I think we talked about most of the news, but of course we would love to hear what you're really excited about as well. Jessica Melvin says, I'm interested to see Fringilla and what she does to impact season 2, Robert. What do you think they will do with her? Will anything be different from the books? Before I throw this to Robert, Lauren Hisrich, the showrunner, she said we'll absolutely get more Fringilla, and she kind of spoke about her in this interview where she talks about, like, she didn't mention Braun, but she will get that kind of treatment where she will have more of an expanded role in season 2. And she talks about how digging deeper into her past and how she ended up in Nilfgaard. And we certainly know that Yennefer had a big impact on that. We talked about chaos and different themes that are prevalent throughout The Witcher, Robert, and that, we saw kind of that spitefulness there, and we saw that she had a big impact on the war at Sodden Hill, even though they lost. So she's probably not very happy about that. And we saw her interact with Kay here. We're going to get more of that. What are your thoughts on Fringilla for season 2?
Yeah, they've definitely beefed up her character. Certainly in season 1, she's a lot more prevalent than in the early parts of the books, in the short stories. I think what they're using her is like one of the faces of Nilfgaard. And so she is the representative of Nilfgaard. Whenever we have like these wizardy meetups, she's the face of Nilfgaard. So that is why I think they decided that they needed not just some sort of generic character, but somebody that they could flesh out a little bit more. So what they will do with her, I think that they will probably, because she has to have a sort of an equal to work against, I think they will play up this link across with Yennefer. Because otherwise she's a magician and she can do whatever she wants, and that's fine. But if she's going to have some opposition, and frankly Yennefer needs opposition, because Yennefer is incredibly powerful. We saw right at the end of season 1, when she actually does unleash the chaos, she is awesomely powerful. So in order for her to have character development, she has to have things that are obstacles for her, that are actually going to prevent her from doing things. And Fringilla will be, I suspect, that obstacle that they put in her way, somebody who can actually play her at her own game.
Yeah, like, what are the limitations of power in this world? That's going to get explored. Like, we saw that Geralt almost got killed by Striga. So that, certainly, even though these characters have magical powers and stuff, that is certainly something that's going to be explored. Something that's really interesting too is when she was having her conversation with Kay here, she talked about the white flame and how that made her confident, because we saw her storm out of the room and she didn't get the job that she wanted, yet she's with Nilfgaard and she's this very confident mage. There is this element of zealotry in the world, not dissimilar to what we see with Melisandre in Game of Thrones, certainly different, but there is this element of religion and zealotry and belief that is throughout this world as well, that is yet to be explored. So I think that is certainly something, Jessica, to your question, something that they can kind of do through Fringilla. And like we spoke about Tisea, she was a big impact on the Lodge of Sorceresses, and then we have Stregobor and kind of that faction. Fringilla is part of the Nilfgaardian faction. There's a lot more behind the scenes on why they do the things they do and why they think the way they do and why they worship this person called the White Flame. So I really, really think they're going to go. I think that's kind of where they're going to go with Fringilla.
Sorry, I was just engaging in the chat there. I agree with you. I think I actually really liked her character in season 1, and I think that having somebody emerge from that same cohort as Yennefer was really useful, because otherwise it just looks like Yennefer's this amazing magical person and all the other people with her weren't. And the interaction that meant that she ended up where she ended up, and Fringilla ended up where she ended up, because Yennefer wanted to be somewhere, will make you always go back. So she wanted to be at home, basically, not at Nilfgaard. And it's always going to make you go back and go, well, what would have happened if that hadn't been the case? What would have happened? And I guess the answer, as it always is in The Witcher, is destiny. It was going to happen. It was always going to happen.
Yeah, that's a great point. spoke a little bit about how the decision of Yennefer created this ripple effect, and then we saw Yennefer being unhappy. She thought she was gonna get all that she desired, being a court mage, and she's like, "I've just been cleaning up political messes." Well, so is Fringilla, but on the offensive. So there's this, we see kind of the idea of what you think you're gonna get if you're gonna get into something, and that being completely changed based on all of these other deciding factors. So. Jessica, great question. Yeah, I know we just talked about it for 10 minutes, but that was a really great question. And yeah, I'm really excited to see kind of how they do this with other characters too, because Kay here is something that is someone that is really interesting, Robert. And one thing that was commented on specifically that was kind of a little bit of a bummer for some people was the Nilfgaardian armor and how it wasn't as menacing as it should be. They're fixing that in season 2, but when they were filming in season 2 already, Robert, they're still using some of that same armor. So you talked about the aftermath of the battle, which is certainly interesting. So maybe they're going to kind of have a glow up, so to speak, with this armor change. Like, interesting what they do with that.
Well, what happens in the books between seasons is that this is the first, as a sort of the background, this is the first big reversal that Nilfgaard has had. They started off right at the very beginning. If you can remember when you get the time when Yennefer was deciding where to go that we were just talking about, one of the reasons she doesn't want to go to Nilfgaard is because it's small, it's a long way away, it's not important. From that small beginning, they sort of burst out and take over all of the south. And this reversal, this loss at the Battle of Southern Hill is huge for them because this is the first time that they've really had a loss like this. They've just been having victory after victory after victory. So between seasons, as it were, what happens in Nilfgaard is that all of the deadweight commanders, this is the excuse that's there to get rid of all of them, replace them with new people, rethink their tactics and strategy, kind of regroup themselves before thinking about moving forwards again. Now that has, I think, two implications. First of all, what you were talking about is that means that we're going to get to see new armor and they're going to look better and cooler and they're going to have better tactics and all the rest of it. But secondly, that also creates this little bit of a gap in the timeline that it allows, in the books, it allowed Ciri to grow a little bit older. It allowed them to make their way all the way up to Kaer Morhen for her to be doing a little bit of training, stuff like that, without having all of the issues about Nilfgaard invading and things like that. So we should see that happening again. It should be more about political maneuvering this season than all-out war.
One thing that's really interesting, too, that was really highlighted in the banquet episode was when Calantha was just talking mad shit to Nilfgaard. She's like, "Who's next? Will you last as Emperor of Nilfgaard for a week, a day?" And she was just like really, really going into them. And we hear the term usurper. I mean, we know all about usurping from Game of Thrones and all of that. And that is something like this idea of stability. Like, look at the decision that Yennefer made, the direct consequence that it had. Because Fringilla is this big deciding factor and why there is more unity. And she makes a really, really, really big impact on why they start to get their shit together. Because like Robert said, like, oh, Yennefer didn't really want to go there. They were small. But now they are the empire of Nilfgaard. They're a major problem. As we saw with Sintra, they were like kind of this Troy-esque kingdom, and they were done. They're wiped out. So really, really interesting kind of plot point there. Something that is really going to be thread through season 2. And yeah, just like that development is huge. Nilfgaard kind of getting their shit together, as Robert said. So yeah, let's do we have any other, did I miss any other questions in chat while we were chatting there, Robert? Have you seen anything?
No. I think so. So Nicola was saying, will Kira Metz make an appearance? Who I think is she's the witch in The Witcher 3, isn't she?
Mm-hmm. She's a fan favorite character from the Witcher games. So I'm not. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, I think they're really going to focus on Triss. I think actually, and we got a question from that in chat, Robert. Robin says she asked earlier I'm not so sure about Kira now, if they're going to stick directly with the books. Triss, though, that's another story.
Yeah, so Kira, my take is that, I mean, she might make an appearance later on, but she's not central to the books, and they appear to be sticking mostly to the books in terms of the show. So I think the short answer is no, but she may appear later as a sort of a cameo or something like that. Triss should have more of a role. She was there in season 1, just sort of in the background. They didn't really make much of her, to be honest. They made sure that we knew she was there. It kind of strikes me as one of the things that I was talking about for season 2, is that they introduce a character so we know about them, and then they'll use them in the next season. So I wonder whether that's what they were doing. She should have much more of a role in the books. If they stick to the book, she will have more of a role in season 2 than she did in season 1.
One of the really interesting part of this question is, like how this affects the relationship with Ciri. And something that I thought was really awesome that you mentioned earlier, Robert, is we have all these men and this one girl, right? Like there isn't this co-equal amount of estrogen and male testosterone going on. It's a lot of male thinking. And Triss certainly, she can certainly make a big impact on that. And you talked about, the connection between Yennefer. And then without spoiling too much into your question, certainly she is someone that Robin, that could make an appearance at Kaer Morhen and be like, oh, like, why are you doing this with a girl? Like, you need to be a little bit different, like in with women. So I think that is a great point that you make, and certainly something that we could see crop up in season 2, Robin, to your question. More female characters making an impact on Ciri as opposed to just male characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
We saw how big of an impact Kalantha made on her, right? So
yeah, and she is I mean, in the book she's a little bit younger, but sort of developing into being a teenager. Obviously on the show she's a little bit older, but she also at that age where she does need to have sort of female guidance about things in life.
Most definitely. Christy of Oldstone. And I actually heard this mentioned yesterday, and I don't think me and Aziz got to it. We were having a big discussion on Grain of Truth. Philippa, another character. So we see all the different sorceresses. Philippa is certainly a character that makes a huge impact in the games as well. So what do you think about Philippa, Robert?
Yeah, she should. So she does appear in Blood of Elves, so she should theoretically appear in season 2. I wonder whether that's just one too many northern wizard for them at the moment. It really depends on what they're going to do with Yennefer's story as much as anything else, I think. I would like to see her. I think she's a really good and interesting character. But there are some characters that they seem to have, if not left out, and then we certainly haven't seen them yet, and we would expect to, like Neneka and all of that. The Temple of Melitala, I think it's pronounced.
Yep.
All of that we haven't really seen, and it was quite a big part. It was the main joining thing in the first set of short stories there, and again it plays a part in Blood of Elves. So I would have hoped that we see them as well, but they have taken some characters out, because what they need to be wary of not introducing too many characters too soon. Even Game of Thrones, which had a cast of thousands in season 1, if you think about it, it was actually still quite limited. We didn't have the Tyrells, we didn't have all of the stuff with Melisandre and people like that. So it was still quite a limited cast. So maybe they're going to give us a few more in season 2. Certainly on the Witcher side, it looks like they are. But I suspect season 1, they were just wanting episodes that almost stood alone, that people could just engage with, which was short stories worked perfect for that. They didn't have to worry too much about the overarching plot until towards the end of the season, when it starts all coming together.
Well, another really interesting thing is she's connected to Vesemir So that the King Vesemir, and then we saw obviously. I mean, we saw Foltest and his sister as children, and Ada as children, and that's when Yennefer, kind of stole away the court mage job from Fringilla. So there's definitely some things that are going on there. So it'd be really interesting to see how Philippa, because she's also connected to a character named Dijkstra, which is going to make an appearance in season 2, who we haven't talked about, a Redenian spy. So maybe she could kind of show up there, Robert. But I think you're pretty on the money with that. Like, I don't think they want to juggle like too much. But I don't know if that answers your question, Chrissy. I don't think they're going to cut her out, but maybe she doesn't have as big as a role with characters like Fringilla and Yennefer around. They can maybe shift some of her story.
Yeah, agreed. And we did get one other question. Actually, Maura Lee, hi Maura, has dropped a super sticker for you there, Kyle.
Oh, nice. Let me see. Thank you very much. She says, you are amazing. I'm assuming she's talking about you, Robert, but I will.
I think she's talking about you, Kyle. It's just you are amazing. So it's just stating the facts.
So can we do a little something cool in chat? Let's show some heart emojis for Maura in chat. She's so supportive of so many different creators. So really, really love that, Maura. Really, really appreciate that. And yeah, let's show some love for Maura in chat.
Yeah, great to see you, Maura.
You said there was another question?
There was one. Let me just flick back. TDA was saying, what do you want or hope the opening scene to be in season 2? Or what do you think they will do?
That's really interesting, man.
Well, I've got one for this if you want a little moment to think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that the ending of season 1, we've got Yennefer, who's there blasting away at the Nilfgaardians and effectively collapsing. You get Geralt and Ciri coming together. Ciri says, who's Yennefer? The obvious thing, and she's had this vision of Geralt there in the aftermath of the battle trying to find Yennefer. The obvious thing is we're going to see the aftermath of this battle and Geralt and Ciri looking for Yennefer, and she is not there. She's gone missing. We don't know where she is. And I think that is where I think it would immediately set up a question which will run for part of the season. What happened to Yennefer? Where is she? And it will set Geralt and Ciri off on this, well, it's just us then thing, and where are they going to go? So I think that would work really well for me as an opening scene.
One thing, you know what I just thought of, Robert, is how we had different like the fire and ice thing going on, switching each season, like finale, like there would be an ice, a fire, and with the Game of Thrones, and then we would also have that for the opening episodes. I wouldn't be surprised if we do get the opening to Nilfgaard, kind of Kaer and Fringilla, and kind of just like the after, because we didn't get to really see that. We got to see the reaction to it, and they were like, well, damn, we just screwed up, like we just got dookied on. But I think that could kind of be a really cool cold opening to the other side. And that's something that I think would make a really cool impact. Because when we get in the first episode of The Witcher, we get a cold open into Geralt fighting a Kaer. So I think that we could get probably, I'm just going to guess and go with Nilfgaard, an opening to that, because not necessarily because it was the first thing that they were doing in filming this year. They don't necessarily go chronologically when they do filming in shows like Game of Thrones, The Witcher, and stuff like that. But I think that is something that certainly could set the tone of the season, because Nilfgaard does make a really big impact. So I'm going to say Nilfgaard, and with Fringilla and Kay here, and kind of their, in showing how bigger their roles are going to be in season 2.
Yeah, I like that too. I mean, I think that the opening of season 1 was trying to grab us. I think that was all it was about. It was about, okay, guys, you know what The Witcher's like. You've played the games. You might have read the books. This is The Witcher doing what The Witcher does. And that was why they just went straight into showing a big fight and went on from there. I thought it worked really well. What the fandom, if you think about the fandom, it wasn't a Witcher fandom at the time so much because we hadn't seen the show, but there was a huge amount of people who'd watched Game of Thrones and were desperate for something really good to happen, and really had high expectations for The Witcher, and then they went bang straight in there with like something that looked awesome, and I think that was really deliberate on their part. They just wanted to grab us from the first moment.
Yeah, one thing that the original David Adams, one true moderator, with of course of Christy of Oldstone, he says, "True Kyle." He says, "Yeah, I love David." He says, "True Kyle, a view from the inside of what they think about moving forward," and that would put like you said, Robert, the focus square on the story, not just Geralt. And like, you know, kind of the overarching stuff that's going to be happening, because like you said, like the first season was kind of this origin story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the origin story. What they have to do in season 2 is set up the arc of the books, which is I'm not going to get into it in detail here, but it's a lot more to do with sort of the elves, and to do with Ciri, and to do with prophecy and things along those lines. And the backdrop to it all is this kind of the political and wizarding maneuverings and machinations going on. So that is what we're going to get set up in season 2, and they're going to get as far into that plot as they can in, I don't know how do we know how many episodes there are in season 2? 8 in 8 episodes.
But they're each going to, like, I mean, there were some episodes that were 64 minutes long. It was like 64 minutes or something. Like, they weren't skipping on the episodes. Like, some Game of Thrones episodes were like 50 minutes, mainly an hour, but like 8 episodes is pretty chunky. And we do get like a lot of the POVs together. So like we can have kind of this back and forth Nilfgaard, Geralt, you know, and then Yennefer. And then as the season moves forward, we can kind of have this, you know, of course we have we have the introduction of other factions and stuff like that. But one thing I wanted to talk about too, and just the off season feels a lot similar in the Game of Thrones off season in a way. And I talk about how people are like the Witcher books are amazing in the chat. I really love that. I think they sold 1 million books from the span of when the Witcher season 1, or The Last Wish specifically, the Witcher season 1 came out until now. So that's really amazing. I went to buy the books for a couple of my friends because I want them to get in the series, and they were interested in it. I said, yeah, let's just do this. Let me get a gift for you. Like, it's just a great series to get into. And they were sold out on Amazon. So like the Witcher community is really, really growing, and I really love that. And people were striving for more content and getting into the books, and that's why I'm doing the Witcher book club and all of that, and trying to get character profile videos and stuff like that out. So a lot more content's coming on the channel as far as that's concerned. I see a lot of people talking about that in chat, and just kind of want to reinforce that I'm really, really loving it, and something that I've enjoyed for years. Like, I read the book series and played the games, so I know it's something that you're enjoying in the off season as well, Robert. As we look forward, like 2021 is pretty far away as we speak of right now. So early 2021 is when they're looking to get the second season out.
Yeah, and just sort of taking the slightly bigger picture, I place that in the world of what are the other things, big TV shows coming out. This is going to be before the Lord of the Rings series comes out and before the Game of Thrones spin-off comes out as well. So Witch is going to have 2 seasons under its belt at least before those 2 things come out, possibly even 3. So it may seem like a long way away, but actually they are charging forward quite quickly.
Oh, damn. Maura Lee with another donation, keeping that hype train going. She says, for the drinking fund. I don't, Coen and Thrones. Maura, I don't know if you need to encourage us to do any more shenanigans at Coen and Thrones, but certainly we will accept it. Thank you very much. One thing I do also want to do is talk a little bit about the join button. So something that I'm super proud of that we just kind of got late last year. If you press that join button, $4.99 a month, I'm doing extra bonus content. And what you do is you can actually, I'm gonna span these Witcher emotes that I got here. Look at that. If you do join, you get a cool Witcher emote. There's all sorts of cool stuff, but really helps out the channel. It's kind of like Patreon. But if you do want to support the channel, you don't have to. I'm always going to create free content, but there's a little bonus extra stuff if you do kind of want to support the channel. And yeah, just it's super cool. Something that I'm super proud of on the channel. So if you do want to support the channel, hit that like button. You can hit the like button, subscribe, hit that join button, and certainly make sure, like I said, to check out Robert's content. link in the description of the video. Try to support your creators, especially in the wintertime. These are kind of, I wouldn't say off months, Robert, but it's a little bit harder in the winter to kind of get yourself out there.
It is, and I would heartily recommend people do support Kyle's channel. It's an excellent channel. If you're here, then you already know this. And what are you waiting for? He's a beautiful man, and he clearly needs to a little bit more money so that he can be trimming his beard just a little bit more. But apart from that, he's a wonderful human being.
So can I get another 15 minutes out of you, Robert? Before
of course, not a problem.
Let's do an open Q&A chat with the session. You guys got some more questions? You'll drive our conversation, and we'll just talk more about the season 2. Maybe we can get kind of a little poll of what everybody in chat's most excited for season 2. Kind of get a little bit of a pulse on what you guys are most excited to see in season 2. All right. So thank you for that again, Maura Lee. Jesus.
Yeah, Maura, absolute legend.
Ooh. Okay, Jessica Melvin has another great question. We can speak a little bit about this without spoiling too much, Robert. Ciri's powers. What exactly does she have?
Okay, so without spoiling
define,
too
right?
much, basically she comes from a magical line. This much we know. It's been revealed on the show already. So we saw her mother. If you remember, when you get the I've forgotten the name of the episode now, but it's when Porcupine Man and Pavetta get together and we see her power when she's just shrieking and everybody gets flung back, and that power has run through the generations in that royal family there in Sintra. So she had it. Ciri, her daughter, has it. Her mother didn't, which was what this is Calanthe, who we see who's the queen there for most of that season. She didn't, so she thought that the magic had sort of stopped with her, and so she was surprised that it carried on. But it has carried on for a long time before that. Where that comes from initially probably is a little bit spoilery, but what we are able to say, I think, is that the magic that we can see is this raw, it's the source energy. She could just push it out like that in the same way that kind of wizards and witches can. But also it can be, if you can be trained at it, you can use it for very intricate things. There's the story of Calanthe's mother, I think it was, who she could open the castle gates from like a mile away or something like that. And this is a huge amount of power which is passed down that one line, which is distinct from the sort of the power that we see in the witches and the wizards. But obviously this all comes from this same source magic. So that's what it is. She is from a magical line, and where that all comes from and what that means is hinted at by what we see Ciri doing her prophecies about at the end of the season. But I think going beyond that is a little bit spoilery.
Yeah, without spoil, I don't want to talk too much about the prophecy because there was a casting sent out for Ithleen. So I don't know how they're going to adapt that into the season. That is something that if you want to look at more about the Curse of the Black Sun and kind of what the Dryad, I mean, we saw source is the perfect word, Robert, because we saw Ciri go directly to the source. You know, what did she learn there? Like, what was the whole conversation that she had? And we saw the effect that the Brooklyn forest water, like she couldn't even get affected by their magical water. So there's something extremely special about Ciri. So that is something that is certainly going to be explored. Throughout future seasons. We have another great comment actually that I want to highlight from Robin O'Neill in chat. She says, Geralt and Ciri equal the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda. That's actually pretty good. I wouldn't say it's the same though.
No, I mean, I've not seen The Mandalorian. It's not out in this country yet. But obviously, it's been impossible to be a human being in the Western world this year without knowing about Baby Yoda. So, yes, there certainly is this thing. And I saw somewhere some comment about how it's really cool that the two big hits over winter are basically about a single dad out just trying to look after his kid, which is a good thing.
Oh, that's so great. It is true though. It is true though. Robert, let me know about the Mandalorian. I won't say much more than that on thing, but let me know if you're interested. So yeah, Elder Blood is right. I see people commenting in chat. We hear it's not that unsimilar to kind of what's going on with Daenerys. Daenerys has dragons, but certainly Daenerys has special blood, Targaryen blood. Elder blood is Elven blood. So there's definitely this kind of lineage thing going on for sure. So yeah, Elder blood for sure. Bravosi broadcast, Mando and Geralt, best single dads on the market. I love where the stream is going right now. We're devolving.
Anna Iglesias was pointing out my beard envy from a while ago. This is true. That's all it was, and I'm just envious of that fine furry thing going on Carl's face.
Well, I told the story yesterday that was a little bit embarrassing. I don't usually kind of do this, but I shaved my beard a while back before. I think it was before Dragon Con. I think it was year before, not last year because I had the beard, but I shaved it. Okay, and I don't like shaved it like literally while I was there. I went to this barber and I said I wanted to trim to the beard, but he shaved off the whole beard. Okay, and then like literally did this like clean thing, and I was on Tinder at the time I was dating, and this girl messaged me. She's like, "Yeah, I'd like to meet up for a drink or whatever." And I'm like, "I don't have the beard anymore." And she ghosted me, and I was like, "I'm never letting that happen again." Now the beard is staying. So a little bit of a context behind the story, people. The beard is staying for quite a long time. My confidence was shattered, even though it was a stupid Tinder thing. But whatever. That's why that happened.
Well, it's looking fine now, my friend. It's looking fine.
So yeah, let's actually, some of the other characters that are really exciting. We didn't talk too much about Nivellen, but that's certainly an interesting get for a very specific character, a special appearance, Kristofer Hivju. We're going to see, and I really think he's perfect for the role of Nivellen.
Yeah, he is. And what I'm hoping is that he brings a little bit of humor to it, because it's as a story, it's a great little story, which has got a sort of a humorous edge to it, but it's also a little bit sinister. So what I'm hoping is that we get a whole lot of banter between him and Geralt. There's this sort of scene where they're sort of sitting, eating stuff at the table, and they're just sizing each other up and all the rest of it. And I would love to see that as the way that he brought humor into Game of Thrones. If he can bring that just kind of like slightly absurdist approach to it, because the character deserves this slightly absurdist. I mean, it's not a spoiler to say it's a Beauty and the Beast kind of idea. It's a funny concept. So I hope that he brings that to it, and so it's not just taking this very, very seriously, adapting the work, but actually enjoying what is there.
Well, their conversation is quite interesting. Without spoiling too much, there is a lot of kind of the themes that were explored in season 1, the idea of monsters and how we perceive them and how we treat people. And Geralt certainly has a better understanding of that. And I think it's kind of similar to what goes on with Renfrey and like how they have a conversation and how he's able to be nicer than normal humans would be. So there's definitely that kind of thing going on. But I'm really excited that Kristofer got cast. He's a nice familiar face, and really, really excited to see that even in the season. Like I said, I didn't think we were going to get many more short stories. But one thing that is really encouraging is that the showrunners are in places like Reddit and listening to the criticisms online, and talking about and trying to honor some of the favorite stuff too. And this is certainly something that was mentioned a lot. So they're going to be inserted, and really excited to kind of see, where they go with the adaptation. And overall, I'm thinking pretty positively about season 2, Robert. I think it's going to go well.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they've got a good team working on this, and I think this time, although they're going to be working to a bit more of a deadline because obviously Netflix are going to be pushing them to get it out as soon as they can. They will, I'm sure, have slightly more budget this time, and I'm sure that they'll be allowed lots of creative freedom as well, because this was a huge hit for Netflix. They absolutely nailed it. So I think all they have to do is just the same thing they did last time: adapt to the stories faithfully, and yes, sort of like. Sorry, you hear that in the background? That was Dan the dog shaking. And all they have to do is just keep on churning away at that story, because it is a good story. It does require some editing to make it work well for the screen, I think, but it's all there for them.
So yeah, with that said, overall, lots of great news, people, about season 2 of The Witcher. Lots of positive vibes. Really excited for all the things that they're going to be bringing, and really just like the big meat of the story being more focused on in season 2. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Super happy to have Robert back and talk about season 2 of The Witcher. Hopefully we'll have Robert on for a book club at some point in the future. That would be fantastic. I'm trying not to plug him in with live on screen, getting him to say yes, but yeah, really.
I would love to come on, mate. Don't you worry. I will happily say that on screen.
But yeah, so I see a question from Twitch. Actually, is Deep Geek a streamer? Yeah, Deep Geek has his own YouTube channel. He does his own streams. Robert, you're going to be ramping up for the Westworld stuff that's coming out really soon.
Yeah, so I stream on YouTube, not Twitch. But so I have a regular live stream every Thursday at 10 o'clock my time. That's 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That covers mostly A Song of Ice and Fire, but also we cover things like Lord of the Rings. When we get into Westworld, I'm going big on Westworld, and I'm going to be doing an extra stream every Sunday before the show, and that's again going to be starting at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So it'll definitely stop before 2 hours, so everyone's got a chance to head off, grab something to eat just before the show. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
So yeah, of course, if you haven't heard of Deep Geek, haven't subscribed to both of his channels, he has a Well-Told Tale as well, where he uses his amazing voice to read stories. You've done Frankenstein and other stories, I believe, right, Robert?
Yeah, so I mean, so many. We've got Frankenstein, War of the Worlds. We've done Call of Cthulhu. We've got a Conan story coming up next, as well as just some random Philip K. Dick. We did Benjamin Button last week, actually. So just basically fantasy and science fiction, the absolute classics, and it's just me doing the audio narrations. No adverts in the middle. I've turned off the adverts during the thing, so it's just all the way through. Try to make it long form, average, if we can, 45 minutes if the story's that long, or something like that each episode. It's just the stories.
Link to both of those in the description of the video. Great playlist of A Song of Ice and Fire content on his channel. Go check that out. And yeah, just for me, more Witcher videos are coming. I actually have another one prepared tomorrow. I just dropped a Vesemir video, just in case anyone hasn't seen it, on the casting of Kim Bodnia, which we talked about earlier in the podcast today. So yeah, lots of Witcher videos coming out. And I'm going to be doing an extended trailer breakdown for Westworld. I'm throwing my hat in the ring for Westworld this year, so I'm going to be really interested to see how that plays out. Really excited. Huge Westworld fan here. Excited for season 3. But yeah, lots of Witcher content coming, Westworld content. And if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comment section about what you're most excited for season 2 of The Witcher. Thank you for all the generous donations. Awesome questions today. And of course, if you want to support the channel, Patreon. Robert has Patreon as well. I have Patreon, and that join button. Hit that join button if you want to support the channel. Really helps out us full-time creators continue to sustain, to make awesome content. So thanks again, everyone. Have an awesome weekend. I'll see you all in the next video. When a humble Deep Geek comes on Kyle